The storm had finally passed, but Noah still could not leave the ark. The endless roar of rain had been replaced by a silence so deep that every creak of the wooden vessel seemed louder than before. Calm waters stretched beyond every horizon, reflecting a sky that slowly brightened with each passing day, yet there was still no sign of the world they once knew. Noah and his family had survived the flood, but surviving was not the same as arriving. They had trusted God through the storm. Now they would have to trust Him through the waiting. Every morning Noah climbed to the upper level of the ark, hoping to glimpse some sign that the earth was changing. His family quietly returned to their daily work, feeding the animals, carrying water, and cleaning the great wooden vessel that had become their entire world. They spoke more softly now than during the storm, as though they did not wish to disturb the peace that had settled over the waters. Although fear had faded, uncertainty remained. Sometimes the hardest part of faith is not enduring the storm. It is waiting after it has ended. One morning, after many months upon the waters, Noah climbed toward the narrow window near the roof of the ark. His sons followed behind him, while the rest of the family gathered below in quiet anticipation. Slowly, he pushed the wooden covering open. Fresh air poured inside for the first time in many weeks, carrying with it the scent of clean water and distant earth. Sunlight spilled across the ancient timber beams, warming faces that had lived beneath lantern light for so long. Noah leaned forward and looked into the distance. The endless violence of the flood was gone, and gentle waves rolled quietly beneath the ark while scattered clouds drifted across a peaceful sky. Yet wherever his eyes searched, there was still only water. No villages appeared. No forests covered the hills. No fields stretched across the valleys. The familiar world had vanished beneath the flood, leaving only silence and an empty horizon. His family joined him one by one, each hoping to discover something different. The younger children searched eagerly for birds. The older sons studied the distant mountains. Noah's wife quietly squeezed his hand, understanding that even this peaceful view offered no answer to the question they all carried within their hearts. The journey was not over. After watching the waters for many days, Noah decided it was time to send out the first messenger. In his hands rested a raven, strong and dark against the golden morning sky. Everyone gathered near the open window as Noah gently lifted the bird into the air. With a powerful beat of its wings, the raven disappeared into the endless sky. It circled high above the ark, gliding effortlessly over the quiet waters before disappearing toward the distant horizon. Noah and his family watched until it became only a tiny shadow against the clouds. Hours passed. Then another day. The raven did not return. No one knew where it had gone or what it had found. Had it discovered land? Had it simply continued flying? The silence offered no answers. Hope stirred for a moment, but uncertainty soon settled once again over the family. 7 days later, Noah stood once more beside the open window. This time he held a gentle white dove. Unlike the raven, the dove searched for clean places to rest. If dry land had begun to appear, this small bird would surely find it. Noah released the dove into the bright morning air, and the little bird disappeared across the calm waters. The family waited together, watching the empty sky hour after hour. Every distant movement caught their attention. Every small bird crossing the horizon caused their hearts to rise with hope before settling again into silence. As the sun began to sink toward evening, the dove returned. Its white wings fluttered softly through the window before settling into Noah's waiting hands. The little bird carried nothing. There had been nowhere to rest. Noah gently stroked its feathers before returning it safely to the ark, and although disappointment touched every heart, no one spoke a word of complaint. They had waited this long. They could wait a little longer. Another week passed quietly aboard the ark. Life settled once again into its familiar rhythm. Each morning began with feeding the animals, gathering fresh water, and tending to the countless daily tasks that kept every living creature healthy. Outside, the waters continued their slow retreat, though the changes were too small to notice from one day to the next. Noah often stood beside the window before sunrise, watching the changing colors of the sky. His children sometimes joined him, asking when they would finally step onto dry ground again. Noah smiled gently, admitting that he did not know. God's timing had guided them through every stage of the journey, and it would guide them home as well. At the end of the seventh day, Noah once again lifted the dove into his hands. The family gathered around him with quiet expectation, each heart carrying a hope too deep for words. He released the bird into the open sky, watching as it disappeared beyond the horizon. The hours passed slowly. Shadows lengthened across the wooden floor of the ark as evening approached. Just as the family began preparing for another quiet night, a familiar flutter echoed through the open window. The dove returned. This time, something rested gently within its beak, a freshly plucked olive leaf. For a long moment, no one moved. Noah carefully took the tiny branch into his hands and simply stared at it. Fresh green leaves. Living color. A sign that somewhere beyond the waters, trees had begun to grow once again. Joy quietly spread through the family. Some smiled through tears. Others embraced one another without speaking. Even the children, though they could not fully understand the importance of the little branch, sensed that something wonderful had changed. Hope had returned, carried not by a miracle of thunder or fire, but by a single leaf. Although the olive leaf filled every heart with joy, God still did not tell Noah to leave the ark. Another week passed in peaceful waiting. The family continued their work exactly as before, understanding that God's promises often unfold one step at a time. Noah no longer looked toward the horizon with anxious eyes. Instead, he watched with quiet confidence. The olive leaf had reminded him that even when he could not see the whole picture, God was already preparing the future beyond his sight. After 7 more days, Noah released the dove once again. This time, everyone watched with peaceful expectation rather than anxious uncertainty. The little bird circled above the ark before flying toward the distant hills, growing smaller until it disappeared completely. Evening came, but the dove did not return. Night fell across the waters, and still it did not return. No sadness filled the ark this time. Instead, quiet smiles appeared across tired faces. The dove had finally found a home. The earth was healing. Day after day, the floodwaters continued to fall. Mountain peaks stood proudly beneath the brightening sky. Valleys slowly emerged from beneath the receding waters, and patches of green began to spread across the land where silence had once ruled. The world that had disappeared beneath judgment was slowly awakening once again. Noah stood beside the open window, breathing deeply as gentle breezes carried the scent of fresh earth into the ark. Every sunrise revealed a little more of God's restored creation. Although they remained inside the ark, the family knew that the day of new beginnings was drawing near. Then, at last, the voice Noah had trusted for so many years spoke once again. God told Noah that the time had finally come to leave the ark. Every season of waiting had reached its perfect conclusion. The great wooden door slowly opened, allowing brilliant sunlight to flood the massive interior. Fresh air swept through the ark as the animals eagerly stepped forward. One by one they walked into a world washed clean, scattering across the valleys and hills that God had preserved for them. Noah and his family followed quietly behind. For the first time in over a year, their feet touched dry ground. They paused together beneath the open sky, overwhelmed by the beauty of the renewed earth and by the faithfulness of the God who had carried them safely through every storm. Before building another home, before planting another field, and before beginning a new life, Noah gathered stones and built an altar to the Lord. His first act upon the renewed earth was not celebration, but worship. He remembered every promise, every storm, every fearful night, and every quiet morning when hope had seemed so small. As smoke gently rose toward the heavens, Noah understood that the olive leaf had never been merely a sign that the flood was ending. It had been a reminder that God's faithfulness often appears in the smallest of beginnings. Great promises sometimes arrive quietly, carried on the wings of a single bird. The story of Noah reminds us that hope rarely arrives all at once. More often, it comes one small step at a time. A quiet answer to prayer, a door slowly opening, or a single olive leaf that whispers a new beginning is near. Faith is trusting God before the promise appears, endurance is trusting Him while we wait, and hope is believing that even the smallest sign can lead us towards something greater. Thank you for joining us on Ancient Light Stories. If this journey encouraged your heart, please like, share, and subscribe as we continue exploring the timeless stories of faith, hope, and courage found throughout Scripture.